So this Sunday, I'm speaking to you about joy. Really, this Sunday? This Sunday, I said goodbye to a dear seminarian friend. This Sunday, I was at a memorial service yesterday for a member of another congregation, also a friend. You need me to be louder. Everybody has their ears on? I have my ears on. This Sunday, I chose to speak about joy. Why, really, in this world? How on earth is it possible to focus on joy in this bruised and hurting world? It's filled with disasters. We're cheering a Category 1 tropical storm, hurricane tropical storm, that has dumped more water in 24 hours than any storm on record. We can't cheer that. We don't know where we are with that. We have people who are lying to our faces every day. We're petrified. We have disasters on all fronts, and we don't know where to find the truth. And I'm going to stand up here and speak about joy. I mean, seems a little ill-timed, right? I'm seeing some nodding heads, because we're all a little beat up. We're all a little wounded. But I really think that a peek into this most misunderstood emotion is essential. In these tough times, I think it's more important than ever. In the epistle to Galatians, Paul wrote, verse 5, "The fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, forbearance, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. Against such things there is no law." Love, joy, peace, forbearance, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. Against such things there is no law. Which means that if you are looking at any of those actions and it is a law against it, that law is corrupt. There is no law against those actions. And perhaps most importantly, it ends with, quote, "Since we live by the Spirit, let us keep in step with Spirit. Let us not become conceited, provoking, and envying each other." And, well, I have a lot of issues with Paul. I find a lot of truth in that statement. Really deep-needed truth in these times. I mean, after all, right after love is joy. Right after love. Right after love comes joy. And joy, what does it mean to you? I mean, really, actually, have you asked yourself the question, what does joy mean to you? Is it a noun? Is it a verb? Is it an emotion? 2 weeks ago, I was on retreat, actually more now. 4 weeks ago? 4 weeks? A bit ago, this summer. I was on retreat at Stony Point Retreat Center in New York State. A safe, beautiful, sacred space. It practices social justice, it practices sacred activism, and with plenty of spaces for small groups and private contemplation, spaces of meditations, labyrinths, woods walks, and they serve wonderfully homegrown food. Oh my gosh, the tomatoes. A joy, a bountiful joy. So this group of interfaith ministers retreated from this bruised and hurting world and the work we do to reconnect, to affirm. We went there just to be real with each other. And the theme of this year was joy. Really? Joy? We're all beat up out here. We're coming together and we're going to do joy. Feels like the world is going to hell in a handbasket. But yeah, I'm about to stand up here and speak to you about joy. Yes, I am. Because if we do not reconnect to joy, we are doomed. doomed. Yeah, wow, that's grim. Ever try to iron with an iron that's not plugged in or turned on? Oh, like, who am I kidding, Lizzie? Who irons these days, right? Nobody irons these days. Now sit with that metaphor for a moment. The world is a wrinkled up mess, and we're not even trying to use the tools that we have to smooth it out. So overwhelming. Who has time for joy? It's said and appears to be shown in many studies we have only 4 universal emotions. Anybody know what they are? Fear, anger, sadness, and joy. And I learned them in college as mad, glad, sad, and afraid. Maybe because they didn't want to give animals the benefit of actually joy, they made it glad, or maybe they said glad because it rhymed with mad and sad. I don't know. But it was thought that only humans had emotions. Now it's largely been disproven by science, and of course anybody that's ever lived with a cat. All of our other emotions are composites. We are all products of our cultures, our times, and our experiences. And yet, globally and specifically, in this moment in time, we're awash in fear. Fear from all sides. Anger at the fear and those who we can point our fingers at for causing it. And sadness as we sit in the pain and suffering. And where's joy? Where's joy? How do we reach for joy? And wait, you got 3 negative emotions and only 1 positive? Does that seem fair? What kind of wiring is that? Really? It's survival wiring. That's what it is. Perhaps we need to reframe it not so much as positive and negative, but realize that all of them are essential. Gahil Gibran answers with a beautiful poem called Joy and Sorrow, which was an answer to a question that he had received. One line speaks to me every single time. When you are sorrowful, look again in your heart, and you will see that in truth you are weeping for that which has been your delight. Now, it could also be that we have all to pay more attention to the items and objects that cause us to be mad, sad, glad, or afraid. I mean, those items that cause us to be scary, or angry, or sad. We have to pay attention to them to survive. I mean, really, there's and evolutionary biologists will back me up on this one, as will psychologists. We needed to pay attention to that which was about to kill us. We had to remember why it was about to kill us, and what it was that was about to kill us, and how we got there. And so that's scared and mad, right? Yeah, scared and mad, and then sad because inevitably there was loss and a little bit of why didn't I think of that before? So that has an advantage to us, a big advantage to us. One-shot learning is really important. But I also think that there's a case to be made that joy is so vast a quality that it dwarfs the other 3 of those basic emotions. I mean, they may be only 4, but it's not a recipe. It's not an equal part of each one. And yet our little brains go, oh, we got 3 of this and only 1 of that? Huh. Here's an idea. Can joy be taken out of any of this? You can. It is an underlying. It is the filter through. We are sad for that which gave us joy. We are angry about that which gives us joy. We are scared to lose that which gives us joy. There are moments of temporary and spontaneous immediate joy, such as a surprise visit from someone dearly loved. For example, my little dog comes in, jumps into my lap, smelling of woods and adventures. And there are those moments of practiced joy, the knowing that yes, bad things have happened, bad things are happening, but I've known joy. I can remember joy, and I know it will return because I've had experiences of knowing it and losing it and having it return. This is not the same thing as being a simple Pollyanna. I'm not speaking about being blind to the realities and depths of the moment. I'm talking about stepping back and knowing from personal experience, you've had moments of joy. You've had moments of sorrow. So in a moment of sorrow, you can remember a moment of joy. But there's also a third and deeper joy. The joy of transcendence and belonging, full of intimate connection and expansive mystery. Deep joy is a spiritual, steady state, accessible to all who look within and then gaze out at the world from their hearts. In Everyday Tao, Master Deng Ning Tao writes, of the qualities of those who follow Tao, which simply translates as the living path. Now, demystify it a little bit because it sounds so exotic sometimes. The living path. Quote, it is a spiritual path of joy and insight, freedom and profundity. He describes the path of living as one of joy. Quote, joyous. Once one gains the Tao, there is absolutely no doubt about it. It's like seeing a God or paradise. No matter what anyone says or does, the experience cannot be erased. So too is that with those who have seen the Tao and who live within its flow. They have a joyous sense of the deepest sustenance. They feel directly connected to the source of life. They do not fear tyranny because no tyrant could ever destroy their faith in Tao. They do not fear poverty because Tao brings them wealth overflowing. They do not fear loneliness because Tao surrounds them constantly. They do not fear death because they know in Tao there is no death. Sounds very familiar to the teachings of another Master of Truth, doesn't it? There is no death. You are surrounded and held. You are never alone. In the depths of your being. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil. In 2016, Archbishop Desmond Tutu and His Holiness the Dalai Lama met for a series of conversations on joy. They were celebrating their 80th birthdays. It culminated in a book called The Book of Joy, Lasting Happiness in a Changing World. It's co-authored by Douglas Abrams. I highly recommend it. There, Archbishop Tutu says, quote, has expressed his belief in the importance of corroborating truth when many fields of knowledge point to the same conclusion. The Tao, the teachings of Jesus, not the dogma. Those are theological corroborating truths. The Eightfold Path, corroborating truths. This beautiful flower in front of me, corroborating truth. Look for that. We need truth now more than ever. Joy is often lumped together with happiness, but is joy the same as happiness? Joy is not the same as happiness. Archbishop Tutu says joy is much bigger than happiness. While happiness often is seen as being dependent on external circumstances, joy is not. Some will say happiness can be a temporary moment. Joy is not. It's a transcendent moment. There's the joy of survival, the joys of accomplishment. One can be pain-filled, you might feel exhausted, but you are nevertheless filled with joy. The birth of a child is often given as an example of that. I will never forget the birth of my child. I had to have an emergency C-section. I was not fully under and they could not medicate me and I wouldn't let them. My arms were tied out, and when that child was brought to my face, that first smell was the smell of profound joy, because we both almost died. But everybody has a story like that. Everybody. Not maybe the birth of a child's story, but everybody has a story of that moment where they almost died. And it doesn't matter that someone comes along to you and says, oh, well, pish posh, my story is better than your story. Remember that part about, like, not judging each other early? And part of that, Galatians, yeah. No, you can't do that, because if you felt that, then you know the joy of that survival. The completion of running a marathon. I have a friend who runs ultra marathons, like 50 miles. 50 miles in mountains. At the end of that, he is so flooded with joy, but also chemical hormones, enzymes. It's the same thing. The process is both scientific, we can measure it, and experiential and spiritual. All of those that come through our bodies, we label that joy. So what are your stories of joy and survival? Because looking through those, looking at them, seeing them and saying, you will then be able to pull that thread of joy right there, right out of that joy seed. And I've thought a lot about this part. Is that where the natural, true emotion of gratitude might spring up? Not that, oh, write lists of how would you be thankful for, which I think is a good practice. I'm not saying don't do that. But I'm saying that sometimes we go, I'm thankful for these flowers. We start doing this little sort of checklist and it stays up here. But where does that natural emotion of gratitude come from? When do we connect to that? I really like Dr. Robert Edmonds' definition of joy. He's a professor of psychology at California Davis. Joy is happiness plus gratitude. Joy is happiness plus gratitude. I like that. But Dr. Reverend Willie Jennings, he's a professor of Yale Divinity. He is brilliant, if not controversial, and he teaches something that I want to hang our hat on right now. I look at joy as an act of resistance against despair and its forces, all its forces. Looking at joy as an act of resistance against despair. In the book of Joy, Tutu and Dalai Lama, they write, quote, we create most of our suffering. And we do. We create most of our suffering, so it should be logical that we also have the ability to create more joy. I mean, it's very pragmatic. And they outline 8 pillars of joy. And I really like practical spirituality. I like the metaphor of pillars. Pillars are, according to Merriam-Webster, tall vertical supports that support a building. And or, I like this, provide essential support for something. Like joy. They hold us up. They hold up that which is above us. That which keeps us safe from storms. Protected from the elements that might cause us suffering. Whether they be the powerful winds of hurricanes or the foul breath of powerful windbags. Whether they be relatives or not. Pillars keep us safe from the immediacy of the tears of the world as shedding rain or as shedding grief. We remain myopic to global climate change, but pillars can give us the ability to cry under a roof safely, howling in private pain until we are cleansed. Pillars hold up the roof of a sanctuary, be they made of marble or living trees holding a canopy of the earth's lungs. All is metaphor. And the pillars they outline make a very good chapel to pray in, a very good hospital of healing. The 8 pillars of joy that they have discovered are perspective, humility, humor, acceptance, forgiveness, compassion, generosity. I'm going to read them again slowly. Perspective, humility, humor, acceptance, forgiveness, compassion, generosity. And in the back of the book they offer a variety of little practices to help. And I believe each of us must cultivate our own personal practices to build shelters of joy and rest in them until we realize that joy is all of creation. It is its very essence. Many of you are familiar with metta meditation. May I be happy, may I be well, may I be safe, may I be peaceful, may I be... We're familiar? I'm seeing some nodding heads and some not so nodding heads. That is metta meditation, M-E-T-T-A. And of course that's a translation from, I believe it's the Pali, but I'm not certain on that. I think it's a translation from the Pali. But there's many translations, and so I like to play with the words in my metta meditations. I sit with them to see what other I might be when I become. You can find it and practice it. And so rather than doing may I be happy, may I be at peace, may I live with ease, may I be free from suffering, I have changed it slightly just as an experiment. May I feel joyful, may I feel safe, may I feel peace-filled, may I feel free, and then may I be joyful, may I be safe, may I be peace-filled, may I be free, may you be joyful, may you be safe. Why don't we just all do this right now? I'll say a line and you're going to repeat. All right? And just humor me. Put your hand on your heart, one hand on your belly. May I feel joyful.
May I feel joyful.
May I feel safe.
May I feel safe.
May I feel peace-filled.
May I feel peace-filled.
May I feel free.
May I feel free.
May I be joyful.
May I be joyful.
May I be safe.
May I be safe.
May I be peace-filled.
May I be peace-filled.
May I be free.
May I be free.
Now look to somebody near you. Hold open your arms. May you be joyful.
May you be joyful.
May you be safe.
May you be safe.
May you be peace-filled.
May you be peace-filled.
May you be free.
May you be free.
Let's do it sort of up and below. May all beings be joyful.
May all beings be joyful.
May all beings be safe.
May all beings be safe.
May all beings be peace-filled.
May all beings be peace-filled.
May all beings be free.
May all beings be free.
Ashe, Amen. And with practice, we can become filled with joy as an undercurrent. But here's the sticky point. We cannot make joy or joyfulness our goal. We cannot make joy or joyfulness our goal because the moment you do it, it becomes like Jell-O. It's gone. So what are we to do? I cannot seek home if I am home. All I will do is keep leaving home again and again and again. So I can practice this, and you will, and it drops little dribbles down that take you back home faster and faster. But how can we find what we can't see, or hear, or taste, or touch? And again, with practice touching all of the metaphors for all of that. These flowers, my cheek, your hand, smelling our world. And in pondering, it became really clear to me that joy is our essential nature. It really is fully entwined with love. So be aware of your spaces of joy, the items within your spaces of joy. But truly the environment you start placing yourself in, where is joy there? Find out, seek places that are so filled with joy that it engulfs you. I'm talking actual geographic places. Like that one spot in your kitchen where the counter is completely smooth and you can chop without any of your elbows hitting anything. You can make these specific. Look there without nostalgia. What is the overall underpinnings? I mean, this is really complex stuff. My grandmother's kitchen was a place of true joy and belonging. Oh, yes, but it was also a place of sadness. It was a place where sadness was shared, It's a place where cuts were scrubbed clean. It's a place where I saw death. It's a place where I saw light. Churches are like kitchens. They can be both places of joy and suffering, places and spaces of profound realities, and of course, profound hypocrisies. Do not let the latter blind you to the former. We're very good at that. We're very good at that. We need to be saying, oh wait, it's not 3 to 1, it's not a recipe. Joy is the undercurrent here. Joy is the undercurrent. Being joyful requires connection to some other, whether it's a child, a stranger, a cat, a tree, a successfully knitted robe, a complicated lace stitch. That's joy. Or God. Without awareness, indeed without multi-level awareness, connections are not possible. Without contact, we cannot access joy in all her myriad expressions. And yet, joy is an internal state. How does that work? Joy arises from within us from a theological standpoint. It's a real argument for the divinity within us, for the indwelling holy, for the fact that we too are spirit. And I recommend you exploring all these practices to bring yourself to the present moment. But we're so good at bringing ourselves to the present moment that we just stop there and say, oh, I've been super good. Oh. Go further, deep, expand, push. There is a grandmother saying, and I found it true in the delving for this past month. Access and underpinning for joy is compassion. I can find for me, and I think perhaps maybe for other people if they really start doing this, no greater ability to access profound transcendental joy than compassion. And this grandmother's saying, you know, grandmother's saying they're truisms that's never written down in any sacred text, but you probably have heard some of them, or you've played around with some of them. This one is an old one. It's passed down around campfires and kitchen tables. Protect your connection to joy. Comparison is the thief of joy, stealing it in the night and day. Judgment is the killer of joy, taking a knife to that which you hold most dear. And always remember, compassion is joy's mother. The Dalai Lama and Bishop Tushu have issued a joint statement, quote, no dark fate determines the future. We do. Each day and each moment we are able to create and recreate our lives and the very quality of human life on the planet. But we can only do so if our irons are plugged in and turn on, and we're willing to use them. We must cultivate joy. We must scatter joy seeds. It is the emotion of salvation. Amen. Namaste. Go with joy. Be joy seed.